All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're digging into a fascinating paradox. You think a global pandemic, a time when we were all trying to avoid human contact, would have been the ultimate red carpet for service robots. But it turns out our relationship with these machines got, well, really complicated. So let's get into it.
I mean, on the surface, this seems like a total no-brainer, doesn't it? Social distancing, contactless everything. This should have been the perfect moment for robots to step up and shine. The expectation was that we'd welcome any machine that could get a job done without us having to get close to another person. But, yeah, there's a twist. It turns out, for a very specific, very tech-savvy group, we're talking Gen Z here, the answer was a big not exactly. In fact, for certain kinds of robots, the pandemic actually made them less popular, which is wild, right? And to understand why, we need to talk about one key thing: power.
Yup, power. And no, I'm not talking about some sci-fi robot uprising. I'm talking about something much more subtle but absolutely crucial: the power dynamic in our day-to-day interactions with technology. When you use a service robot, who's really calling the shots?
So researchers have this term, social power, which basically just means your ability to influence or change a situation. When it comes to robots, it's pretty simple. Do you feel like you're in charge, telling the machine what to do? Or does the robot have the power, performing a complex task on you? That feeling of being in control or not is the key to this whole puzzle.
Let's make this super clear with the two types of robots they used in this study. On one hand, you've got what they call a low-power robot. Think of an airport check-in kiosk. You're the boss. You're tapping the screen, making the choices, and the stakes are pretty low. But then you have the high-power robot, like a surgical system. Here, the robot has all the expertise and control, and the stakes, well, they couldn't be higher.
Okay, so first, let's set the scene. We need to know what things were like before the world went sideways. Researchers surveyed a group of Gen Z folks back in February of 2020, literally right before the pandemic was declared. This gives us a perfect snapshot of the before times.
And honestly, the results were exactly what you'd probably guess. On a scale of 1 to 7, the low-power check-in robot scored a really positive 5.49. The high-power surgeon robot, a much lower 4.65. So, no big surprises yet. People felt way better about the robot they were in control of.
And this wasn't just about feelings. It was about what they'd actually choose to do. A huge 78% said, yep, I'd use the check-in robot. But for the surgeon robot, oof, less than half, only 45% were on board. This all tracks, right? It makes perfect sense. But then, everything changed.
Just a few months later, the world was a completely different place. So the researchers did something really smart. They went back to the exact same group of people. They wanted to see how a massive global crisis shifted their thinking. And what they found? Well, it was completely counterintuitive.
You can see just how fast this all happened. The first study was in February. By June, the pandemic was in full swing. And because they were able to talk to the same exact people, they could really zero in on the pandemic's impact.
Okay, so let's look at the high-power surgeon robot first. How did our feelings about it change during the pandemic? The answer? Almost not at all. The score stayed incredibly stable, which, is interesting, but it's not the big surprise.
Okay, here it is. Get ready for this. Look at the attitude toward the simple, helpful check-in robot. It dropped, and not by a little, by a lot. In the middle of a pandemic that was all about contactless solutions, Gen Z suddenly felt less positive about the very robot you'd think they'd be rushing to use.
This is the heart of the paradox. It just flies in the face of logic. Why would a crisis that put a huge premium on safety and distance make us feel worse about a perfectly safe, distant option for a simple task? What is going on here?
Well, the answer isn't about the technology. It's about us. It's about our psychology. To figure it out, the researchers had to dig deeper than just the numbers and look at what people were actually thinking and feeling.
So, when it came to the high-power surgeon robot, people's priorities never wavered. Before, during, or after a crisis, if a robot is performing surgery on you, your number one concern is that it does its job perfectly. The social situation just doesn't matter. You want precision.
But for the low-power check-in robot, the story is completely different. During a time of incredible stress, isolation, and uncertainty, our need for human connection and empathy just skyrocketed. And all of a sudden, the very impersonality that made the robot seem efficient now just felt cold and lonely.
And this is the core finding. The crisis didn't just make us want more technology everywhere. It made us value human connection even more, especially in those simple, everyday encounters. We became much less willing to trade a friendly face for a sterile screen, even if it seems safer.
So this is more than just a weird psychological quirk from a strange time. It has huge implications for how we think about, design, and use robots in our world. And it says something really deep about what we value as people.
So what does this all mean? Well, for one, you can't just throw a robot at every problem and expect it to work. For those high-stakes, high-power jobs, the goal has to be trust built on accuracy and transparency. But for those frontline, low-power services, we have to recognize that the human touch itself is a critical part of the experience, especially when we're all feeling a little vulnerable. It forces us to ask, which human jobs are really about connection, not just function?
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. In a world that's rushing toward automation, this research is a powerful reminder that some interactions might just be too human to replace. So I'll ask you, what's the one job you feel should always, no matter what, be done by a person? It's a question we're all going to have to answer as we build our robotic future. Thanks for watching.